Satya, Mind, Body, Spirit, Health, and Healing. This TMS talk comes from Dr. Rangan Chatterjee's podcast called Feel Better, Live More. In this talk, Bruce Lipton gives us an introduction to the very exciting and empowering field of science called epigenetics.
And living in a stress state relate to our conscious and non-conscious minds?
That is perhaps one of the most important questions in this world right now for a very simple reason. We believe so many issues and diseases are associated with genes. And I say, when I was teaching in a medical school, what was I teaching doctors? Well, at that time, genes turn on and off, and genes control the character. And then I say, well, as far as you know, you didn't pick the genes. And if you don't like your characters, you can't change the genes. And since they activate themselves, then you become a victim of your heredity. Oh my God, there's cancer running in my family. I have a cancer gene. And I go, okay, let's get to a real simple fact. Less than 1% of disease is connected to genes. Less than 1%. 90% plus is all stress related, okay? So all of a sudden I say, well, you want to try to adjust the genes. I said the genes didn't have a problem. It was the stress that was causing the problem. And now with the new science, it's called epigenetics. It sounds like genetics, but epi means above. So what we call skin, epidermis, because just below the surface skin is a layer called the dermis. Epidermis means above the dermis, that's the skin. So I say epigenetics means control epi, above the genes. And now there's a whole new understanding because we're not victims of the genes. We understand now that we actually control our genetic activity through our consciousness, or subconscious, more importantly, because that's 95% of the time. A big important point. This is like maybe a lot of people in the audience are going to freak when I say this, but for example, there's no gene that causes cancer. Everyone says, oh, oncogenes, cancer genes. I go, no, there's no gene that causes cancer. They're correlated with cancer, but they're not the cause. So especially like women are very concerned because they get, I've got diagnosed, I have the BRCA, breast cancer gene. Immediately, what's the consciousness of the programming that people have? The gene is going to give me cancer. And now the fear of cancer rises in them because they say they have this gene. And then I go, well, guess what? 50% of the women carry this gene, never get the cancer. So the first thing you have to understand is this: possession of the gene doesn't cause the cancer. It's a life that's not in harmony, a life that's out of balance. That's when that gene is activated. So we've been blaming genes, but we're never giving any credit or power to the person who can influence those genes. And this is what epigenetics is all about. Consciousness is controlling your genetic activity.
I want to close out today's TMS talk with two excerpts from Bruce Lipton's book, The Biology of Belief. It's a must-read if you haven't read it. This really addresses the question of why don't more of us know about this stuff? Okay. This is a giant mistake. The placebo effect should be a major topic of study in medical school. I believe that medical education should train doctors to recognize the power of our internal resources. Doctors should not dismiss the power of the mind as something inferior to the power of chemicals and the scalpel. They should let go of their conviction that the body and its parts are essentially stupid and that we need outside intervention to maintain our health. He continues on. I believe the reason the mind has so summarily been dismissed in medicine is the result of not only the dogmatic thinking, but also financial considerations. If the power of your mind can heal your sick body, why should you go to the doctor? And, more importantly, why would you need to buy drugs? In fact, I was recently chagrined to learn that drug companies are studying patients who respond to sugar pills with the goal of eliminating them from early clinical trials. It inevitably disturbs pharmaceutical manufacturers that in most of their clinical trials, the placebos, the fake drugs, prove to be as effective as their engineered chemical cocktails. Greenberg, 2003. Though the drug companies insist they're not trying to make it easier for ineffective drugs to get approved, it is clear that the effectiveness of placebo pills is a threat to the pharmaceutical industry. The message from the drug companies is clear to me. If you can't beat placebo pills fairly, simply remove the competition. Alright, so definitely check out that book. It's really good, and it was very impactful for me a few years ago and gave me a huge boost forward.